Morning, everybody. My first cooking segment. I've been thinking about doing this for a long time, and I figured that it might be fun to share with you, especially during these times. We'll make a couple of different dishes, go over some little cooking methods here and there, and have a good time doing it. As you can see, this is my tiny little galley kitchen. I dig my little man crib here and my little cave, and it's good because to have a kitchen like this, it helps to reinforce some of the things that really help your cooking experience. I'm here to tell you this, above all else, cooking is not a hard thing to do. It really isn't. It's just really about organizing and then having the confidence that what you're going to make is going to be good. And just like anything else, well, confidence just comes with the experience that you'll have. So we're going to continue over these next couple of segments to kind of go through a few things. And I figured for my first dish that I'm going to do, my first job in television on the air was in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is just about 2 hours north of Mexico. So you have a lot of Mexican Americans there. You have a lot of Mexican nationals there. And the food that those folks make is just outrageous. I love it. I don't have a drop of Mexican blood in me, but it is my favorite food. And this is one of the breakfasts that they make, and it's called Migas, M-I-G-A-S. And the nice thing about it is you can kind of put in whatever you'd like, but the recipes, if you go to what they call the taquerias down there, which is sort of the Mexican version of a diner, the general recipe is you have an onion, a pepper of some kind. This is a poblano, so it's got a little bit of a kick to it, but it's not like a jalapeno, but it's also not mild like a bell pepper either. Just a little plum tomato, some boar's head, low sodium ham. Of course, you don't have to put that in there if you're vegetarian or not a fan of ham. And the first ingredient that you've got to start with is the corn tortillas. So I generally do one corn tortilla per egg, so I'm going to do 3 eggs. And the nice thing about corn tortillas is there's not a lot of junk in them. It's basically just ground cornmeal, some lime, and then a couple of other little spices, and that's it. They're gluten-free, and they crispen up really nicely too, almost like little Fritos once you get going. So we're going to chop these things up into little cubes. You can make them as big or small as you want. I think that the medium size works best because if they're too big, then they just don't go really well with the dish itself. And if they're too small, then they can tend to crispen up too much and they get lost in the egg. So you want to just basically make sure that you, cut them up to about just a little size like that. Pretty good stuff. A lot better when they're heated up, of course. The other piece is, as you get to cooking, another really important thing is just have all your stuff out at once before you even start, because cooking is on your clock. It's on your time until you actually start applying heat to something. Then the time becomes an issue because you don't want to get out of sync with what you're doing. So the general rule is the more stuff that you can prep ahead of time, then you can kind of let the cooking, the heat come to you, as it were. So just wanted to throw that out there. Cast iron skillet. There's lots of great cookware out there. I've got a lot of different kinds, but for this dish, I love this cast iron skillet. This puppy is about 25 years old, and it'll be here long after I'm gone. It's been nicely seasoned. So we're just going to put a little, I don't know if you can see that, just going to put a little olive oil in, let that heat up. You want to get your pans, any pans for the most part, not always, but for the most part, you want to get your pans heated up before you put anything into them, especially something like corn tortillas. So you'll start to see the oil in there get a little bit of what they call a sheen to it. So that'll heat up pretty quickly because I've been preheating this pan. So that's the first thing that we're going to do is put in these corn tortillas. Throw a little ground pepper on there, a little bit of kosher salt, and then basically just kind of spread them out along the pan and a little bit of a single layer, but the oil having tossed in there, we'll just kind of coat these things. These are going to cook for about 10 minutes or so, because you want to get them good and crispy. Not too crispy, but crispy enough. And that'll give us time to chop up everything else here. And again, you can have all this stuff prepped before you apply any heat at all, but I've made this dish about 8,000 times, so I'm pretty comfortable with my little routine and flow here, as it were. So I'm going to cut all this stuff up here. Generally with an onion, what I like to do is to cut it up, peel off the outer layer. You can keep some of the green on there if you want, or if you want to go down one more layer, you can do that. The other thing you want to do when you're cooking is to clean up as soon as you can. As soon as you're done with something, get rid of it, because that will only complicate things, especially in a smaller kitchen like this. You don't want to be tripping over stuff that you don't need. So you want to get rid of everything. And I'm not talking about just the little rinds of an onion. I'm talking about things like measuring cups, knives, anything that you can spill. Just get it out of the way. Either put it in the sink where it's out of distance, or just whatever you need to do. That's important stuff. So that's gone, and I'm going to take this onion. I'm not going to chop up the whole because I won't need all of it. It's just me. But what I like to do with onions too is to cut up like 2 slides on either side, because it just gives you more leverage. If you're holding kind of the fatter, the middle part of the onion, gives you more leverage and gives the knife less of an opportunity to slip, because a slip knife means at very best some band-aids, and you don't want that. So we're going to chop these up. Chop them up, pretty fine. It doesn't have to be like a fine dice or anything like that. All right, so the onion is diced up that we need. You can see these corn tortillas are starting to get a little bit crispened up. Just kind of toss them around a little bit here and there. Still have some more time to go. And we're just going to set these onions aside. And now we're going to chop up our poblano. Some of these poblanos are tricky because sometimes they can be a little spicy. They can have a little bit of a kick to them. A lot of times they're not too bad, but what you generally want to do is avoid the seeds, especially in jalapenos too, but even in these poblanos, that's where a lot of the heat is held. So you just want to get rid of that. And we'll just rinse this out real quick. The other thing too about peppers is, hot peppers, is that once they start to cook, they release some of their heat, a lot of their spice, if you will. What a chipotle is, it's actually a smoked jalapeno pepper, and certainly it's got a lot of heat to it, but a lot of the heat that you'll find in a chipotle comes from the seeds that are still in it. But as you cook peppers down, they tend to mellow out a little bit more. So we're just going to chop this poblano up. Finish up the fine touches on this poblano here. And then I'm going to check these corn tortillas again. They're starting to crispen up. You can hear them as they're scraping the bottom of the pan. And, of course, they're going to still cook as you're adding your other ingredients. So they're getting to be just about the time when I'm going to add these peppers and onions in here. And we're going to let those cook down a little bit as well. We'll just toss them all in. In essence, man, this dish is basically just a fancy scrambled eggs. But it's a heck of a lot more than that, as you'll see. We'll just kind of toss all these together. The onions will cook down a little bit. They'll start to brown. They'll start to not quite caramelize, but they'll certainly get a little bit more flavorful. Anytime you add stuff like that, even spices or whatever to heat, it tends to open them up. They become a little bit more floral, if you will. Not to take over Governor Cuomo's use of that with the hand sanitizer. That was pretty funny. Now we're just going to take a little tomato. And truth be told, I'm not much of a fan of tomatoes, but I don't mind them in this dish. As the great George Carlin once said, he doesn't eat tomatoes because they look like little pink bicycle tires. And I don't eat bicycle tires. Why would I eat a little pink one? Can't argue with that. All right, so the tomatoes are chopped up, ready to go. We'll take a look at this. Little steam coming off. That's the water coming out of the onions and the peppers. Kind of tossing these things together, and you can just, the smell is just awesome. You just tell that all this stuff is starting to really open up. And we'll let them cook down for just a couple more minutes at best. So, again, just sort of in keeping in step with everything. Rolling along with things. I've got 3 eggs. These are fairly local eggs. They're from Elizaville, which is down along the Columbia-Dutchess County border, so a little bit farther south. But any pasture eggs are the best to go because the hens just go and do their thing, and they're not in cages, and they have all of their stuff going on. they can go outside and they lay some good healthy eggs. So that's what you want with that. And just tend to whisk them up a little bit. Definitely want to put the eggs away, as I mentioned. Don't want to break the rest of whatever's in the carton. And with that, these are starting to crispen up nicely. So I'm going to drop these tomatoes in here. Toss those in. Whoops. The other thing about food, it's no secret or no mistake why when you go to like restaurants and stuff, everything just looks so good because it just, your eyes and your mind and your belly all kind of get on the same page. So, I mean, just look how pretty that is. You got all those colors there. The smell is really good as well. And then the last step that I'll throw in, again, this is totally optional, but I like it in there, is this ham. It is, as I mentioned, the Boar's Head low sodium, which is my favorite ham on the market for things like this. So we're going to dice this up about the same size as the tortillas. You can also substitute a ham steak for this if you wanted to cut it into cubes or something like that. You could do that as well. So we'll put that in and let that warm up with everything else. We're now done with the cutting board and done with the knife, so that gets out of the way. Oh, by the way, if you have a cutting board on a counter that slips, just get some of this like contact papery stuff that you put in like on your shelves to keep things from slipping. Put it right on the counter. Put that on top. Doesn't move. Or you can just take a dish towel and wet it and put a wet dish towel under there. Just it'll keep it from sliding around. When you're dealing with cutting up things and you have a sharp knife, the less things that are moving around out of your control, the better. All right, so we're basically done. I'm going to throw these eggs in here. In just a minute, take another kind of a check on all of this. Again, the other great thing about these cast iron skillets is that they hold heat really well. They heat evenly and they hold the heat, so you don't have to worry about adding different things at different times, because when you add something that's cold, obviously it's going to drop the temperature of the pan and everything around it. But these things recover really nicely. So now that the eggs are in there, I'm going to swirl these around. So now these eggs are about halfway cooked. So what I'm going to do, which is also optional, is add one of my two favorite hot sauces. This is Louisiana hot sauce. The reason I like this is because there are 3 ingredients in it: peppers, vinegar, and salt. That's it. So I'm just going to pour that just a little bit over the eggs there. Toss all of that in. When you buy sauces, by the way, especially like barbecue sauces and things, take a look at the ingredients, because there are so many really good ones that are out there, and then there are so many other ones that just have junk in them, like Sweet Baby Ray's. I know that's a real popular barbecue sauce and all that, and great company, whatever. The first ingredient on their list is corn syrup. Come on, man, you got to do better than that. So there are lots of really good sauces out there, and that is just a plain old straight up hot sauce. And we are just about done letting this stuff cook up. See what I mean too about this cast iron skillet. If you do cook eggs in a cast iron skillet and the eggs stick, you just have to re-season it, the skillet that is, and we'll go over that at another time. But for now, this is how all of this looks. There you go. I hope you like this. I'm going to continue to do some more of these, and we're going to do different recipes for simple things and a little bit more complex things. But again, cooking is not complex. It's just a lot of fun for me, It is a huge way to just chill out and relax, especially in times like these. You'll see a glass of wine here, not in the morning for me, but you know, in the evenings or late afternoons on a weekend, you better believe it. So we're going to cover a lot of these things, and these videos will be improving as I kind of hone in my skills. But I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you have a great weekend, and check back in. The weather coming up in the next few days is going to be conducive to some big time comfort food. So I've got one dish in particular that I've got in mind that I'll make for you guys, and hope you enjoy that as well. Have a great day.